You know what most people don't realize? Texas might seem like the perfect place to disappear from the system, build your homestead, and live truly free. But the reality is far more brutal than any survival challenge you've faced before. The state that prides itself on independence has created a legal minefield that can destroy your off-grid dreams overnight. And if you don't know where the traps are hidden, you'll lose everything you've built. Right now, while you're watching this, hundreds of Texans are facing fines, forced evictions, and even criminal charges simply because they tried to live self-sufficiently on their own land. The question isn't whether you want to go off-grid in Texas, it's whether you can survive the system designed to stop you. If you're serious about true independence and want to learn what the government doesn't want you to know, subscribe now, because this information could be the difference between freedom and financial ruin. Texas is one of the few states where off-grid living is technically legal, but that single word, technically, hides a nightmare of regulations, county codes, and municipal ordinances that turn your dream into a bureaucratic war. While the state doesn't explicitly ban disconnecting from utilities, individual counties and cities have the power to enforce building codes that make true off-grid living nearly impossible. In most urban and suburban areas of Texas, you're legally required to connect to municipal water and sewer systems, even if you don't want to use them. That's right. You can have a perfectly functioning rainwater catchment system and a composting toilet, but the county can still force you to pay thousands of dollars to hook up to city utilities you'll never turn on. This isn't about safety or public health, it's about revenue. And every month you're not paying those utility bills, your money the system is losing. The International Residential Code, which most Texas counties have adopted, requires that all habitable structures have approved water supply, sewage disposal, and electrical systems. These codes were written with grid-connected homes in mind, and they create massive obstacles for anyone trying to live independently. Want to use solar panels as your only power source? You'll need permits, inspections, and in many cases, you'll still be required to have a connection to the electrical grid as a backup system. Want to collect rainwater? Texas is actually one of the better states for this, even offering tax incentives for rainwater harvesting. But your system must meet specific plumbing codes and pass inspections that can cost thousands. Want to use a composting toilet or septic system? Prepare for geological surveys, percolation tests, and setback requirements that might make it impossible on smaller properties. Every single aspect of off-grid living that makes you independent becomes a legal battle you have to win. Here's where it gets worse. Texas counties have wildly different regulations, and what's legal in one county can get you arrested in another. In rural counties like Hudspeth, Terrell, or Brewster, you might find relatively relaxed enforcement and the freedom to build alternative structures like yurts, tiny homes, or even earthships without constant interference. These remote areas often have fewer building inspectors and a culture that respects property rights and self-sufficiency. But move to Travis County, Harris County, or any area near Austin, Houston, or Dallas, and you're entering enemy territory. These urbanized counties enforce building codes with aggressive inspection departments, and they have the legal authority to condemn your property, force you off your land, and even bulldoze your home if it doesn't meet their standards. People have lost everything because they didn't understand that Texas isn't one unified legal landscape. It's 254 different counties, each with its own rules, and some of them are actively hostile to off-grid living. The water situation in Texas exposes the deepest contradiction in the entire off-grid legal framework. Texas is the only state in the U.S. where rainwater is considered private property, meaning you have the legal right to collect every drop that falls on your land. The state even passed laws encouraging rainwater harvesting and offering tax exemptions for rainwater collection systems. On the surface, this looks like paradise for off-grid living. But here's the trap. Even though you can legally collect rainwater, many counties still require you to connect to municipal water if it's available within a certain distance of your property. You can have 10,000 gallons of clean rainwater in storage tanks, but if city water lines run within 200 feet of your land, the county can mandate that you hook up and pay monthly fees. This isn't just bureaucratic absurdity, it's a deliberate strategy to prevent people from achieving true water independence. The counties argue it's about ensuring safe drinking water, but the real reason is financial. Municipal water departments are revenue generators, and they can't afford to lose customers. Wastewater disposal is where most off-grid plans in Texas completely fall apart. The state requires that all residential properties have an approved method of sewage disposal. And in most counties, that means either connecting to city sewer or installing an aerobic septic system. Traditional septic tanks are often prohibited in areas with clay soil or high water tables, and Texas has plenty of both. Aerobic systems, which use oxygen to break down waste more efficiently, cost between $10,000 and $20,000 to install, require regular maintenance, and need electricity to run the aerator pumps. Even if you're living off solar power, you're now dependent on an electrical system for your sewage, which defeats part of the purpose. Composting toilets, which eliminate water use entirely and create nutrient-rich soil, are legal in Texas but face massive regulatory obstacles. Most counties classify them as experimental systems, requiring special permits, regular inspections, and approval from the local health department, which often denies them simply because inspectors don't understand how they work. Electrical systems reveal another layer of the off-grid trap in Texas. Solar power is legal and even incentivized through property tax exemptions, but the permitting process is designed to force you back onto the grid. Most counties require that solar installations be performed by licensed electricians, inspected by certified inspectors, and built to code standards that assume grid connection. Even if you're planning to live 100% off solar with battery storage, many jurisdictions require that your home has the infrastructure to connect to the grid, meaning you need to pay for the service line installation, even if you never flip the switch. Some counties go even further, requiring that off-grid homes have a minimum level of electrical service, which they define as grid connection. The justification is fire safety and emergency access, but the effect is that you're paying for a utility you're actively trying to avoid. Wind turbines face even stricter zoning restrictions, with many counties banning them outright or requiring setbacks so large that they're impossible on residential properties. The legal definition of a dwelling creates massive problems for anyone trying to build alternative structures in Texas. Most counties define a legal residence as a permanent structure with a foundation, approved utilities, and a minimum square footage, usually between 600 and 1,000 square feet. This eliminates tiny homes, yurts, canvas structures, and most mobile dwellings from being classified as legal residences. You can park an RV on your land, but you can't live in it full-time in most counties without violating zoning laws. You can build a tiny house, but it won't pass inspection unless it's on a permanent foundation and meets the minimum square footage requirements. The state's property tax system also punishes alternative structures. If your home doesn't meet the legal definition of a residence, you lose your homestead exemption, meaning you'll pay significantly higher property taxes. This financial penalty alone has forced many off-gridders to either conform to building codes or abandon their properties. Here's a reality check most people ignore when they romanticize off-grid living in Texas. The climate is actively trying to kill you, and your off-grid systems need to handle extremes that most Americans never face. Summer temperatures regularly exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit across most of the state, and without air conditioning, you're facing genuine heat stroke risk. Solar panels lose efficiency in extreme heat, and battery systems degrade faster in high temperatures, meaning your power supply is least reliable exactly when you need it most. Winter brings its own nightmare. The 2021 Texas freeze proved that even grid-connected homes can lose power for days. But off-grid systems face worse challenges. Solar panels covered in snow or ice produce zero power, wind turbines can freeze, and if your water storage freezes, you're facing a survival emergency. You need backup heating systems, insulated water lines, and enough stored energy to survive weeks without sun or wind. Most off-grid beginners in Texas don't build systems robust enough to handle these extremes, and they end up crawling back to the grid after their first real crisis. Water scarcity is the single biggest survival challenge for off-grid living in Texas, and it's only getting worse. The state is in a long-term drought cycle, and groundwater levels are dropping every year. If you're planning to rely on a well, you need to understand that drilling costs in Texas range from $15 to $30 per foot, and many areas require drilling 300 to 800 feet to reach reliable water. That's $10,000 to $24,000 just to access water, and there's no guarantee you'll find it. Even if you hit water, Many areas of Texas have high mineral content, requiring expensive filtration and softening systems. Rainwater harvesting sounds ideal until you do the math. The average Texas home uses 5,000 to 10,000 gallons of water per month, and even with conservative usage, you need significant rainfall to meet that demand. West Texas gets as little as 8 inches of rain per year, meaning rainwater alone won't sustain you. You need multiple water sources, massive storage capacity, and water conservation systems far beyond what most people prepare for. The property tax trap is something almost no one talks about when discussing off-grid living in Texas. The state has no income tax, which sounds great, but it funds government through aggressive property taxation. Rural land with no structures has relatively low taxes. But the moment you build anything, even a cabin or shed, the county reassesses your property and your taxes skyrocket. If you're trying to stay under the radar and avoid permits, you're taking a huge risk. County appraisers use aerial photography, satellite imagery, and even drone surveillance to identify unpermitted structures. When they find your off-grid cabin that you built without permits, you'll face retroactive taxes, penalties, and possible criminal charges for building code violations. The only way to protect yourself is to follow the legal process, get permits, and build to code, but that forces you into the exact system you're trying to escape. There's no easy answer. You either pay the system or risk losing everything. The enforcement mechanisms counties use to punish off-grid living are more brutal than most people realize. When you violate building codes, the county doesn't just send you a warning letter. They issue citations with daily fines, often $500 to $1,000 per day, that accumulate until you comply. If you ignore the citations, they can place a lien on your property, meaning you can't sell or refinance without paying the fines first. If you still refuse to comply, they can take you to court, obtain a judgment, and eventually force the sale of your property to satisfy the debt. In extreme cases, counties have used criminal charges like maintaining a public nuisance or zoning violations to pressure off-gridders into compliance. This isn't theoretical. Texas counties have condemned and demolished off-grid homes, forcibly evicted residents, and seized properties over building code disputes. The legal system is designed to break your will and your bank account until you either conform or leave. Here's what actually works if you want to survive off-grid in Texas legally. You need to pick your location with surgical precision. The 5-acre rule is your friend. In most Texas counties, if you own at least 5 acres, you're exempt from many subdivision regulations and have more freedom to build alternative structures. But you need to research specific county codes before you buy land. Call the county building department. Ask about minimum dwelling requirements, septic regulations, and solar permitting. If they're hostile or evasive, that's a red flag. Look for counties with few building inspectors, low population density, and a history of respecting property rights. Far West Texas, the Trans-Pecos region, and parts of the Hill Country offer the best combination of legal flexibility and livable conditions. Avoid anything within 50 miles of major cities, because suburban sprawl brings code enforcement with it. When you build, you need to decide whether you're going permitted or underground. The permitted route is safer legally but more expensive. You'll pay for permits, hire licensed contractors, and build to code, which means your off-grid cabin will cost as much as a regular house. The advantage is you're protected from legal action, you get your homestead exemption, and you can openly live on your property. The underground route is cheaper initially but carries massive risk. You build without permits, stay off the radar, and hope you're never reported. This works in remote areas with minimal enforcement, but if you're discovered, you'll face fines, legal battles, and possible demolition. Many successful off-gridders in Texas use a hybrid approach. They build a small permitted structure that meets minimum code requirements, then add unpermitted outbuildings, solar arrays, and water systems that technically don't require permits. This gives you legal residency while maintaining independence. Your utility strategy needs to be code compliant, even if you never use grid services. Install an electrical panel and service connection even if you're running on solar, because that satisfies the building code and gives you a backup during extended outages. For water, if you're in a county that requires grid connection, pay for the hookup, but don't use it. Run your home on rainwater and well water, but keep the city connection as a legal backup. For sewage, install the most code-compliant system available in your area, even if it's expensive. An approved septic system protects you legally and adds property value. If you want to use composting toilets, install them as secondary systems in outbuildings or workshops where regulations are less strict. This approach costs more upfront, but it eliminates the legal vulnerabilities that destroy most off-grid operations. Food production is where off-grid living in Texas offers genuine advantages if you understand the agricultural exemptions. Texas offers massive property tax reductions for land used in agricultural production, and the requirements are surprisingly achievable. If you run cattle, grow hay, keep bees, or raise goats on your property, you can qualify for an ag exemption that cuts your property taxes by 50 to 90%. This isn't just a financial benefit, it's a legal shield. Agricultural properties face less scrutiny from code enforcement, and you have more freedom to build barns, greenhouses, and equipment sheds without permits. Growing your own food also reduces your dependence on supply chains, which matters during the droughts, floods, and infrastructure failures that Texas experiences regularly. But you need realistic expectations. Texas soil is often poor, water is scarce, and the growing season is brutal. You're not going to feed yourself entirely from a garden. You need livestock, preserved foods, and backup supplies. The community aspect of off-grid survival in Texas is something most people completely misunderstand. Going off-grid doesn't mean isolating yourself in the wilderness. It means building networks with other independent people who share skills, resources, and information. The best off-grid communities in Texas are informal networks of neighbors who help each other with water hauling, equipment repairs, and code enforcement problems. You need relationships with local well drillers, solar installers, and septic contractors who understand off-grid systems and won't report you to the county. You need to know which county commissioners support property rights and which ones are hostile to alternative living. You need to be on good terms with your immediate neighbors, because one complaint to code enforcement can trigger an inspection that destroys your setup. Off-grid living requires social intelligence, not just survival skills. The financial reality of going off-grid in Texas is far more expensive than most people calculate. A truly independent off-grid property with solar power, water systems, septic, and a code-compliant dwelling requires a minimum investment of $100,000 to $150,000 if you do significant work yourself. If you hire contractors for everything, you're looking at $200,000 to $300,000. Land costs vary wildly. You can find cheap land in remote West Texas for $1,000 to $3,000 per acre, but it will have no water, terrible soil, and extreme isolation. Better land near hill country or East Texas costs $5,000 to $10,000 per acre, but offers better water access and more moderate climate. You need to budget for ongoing costs too. Solar batteries need replacement every 5 to 15 years at $10,000 to $20,000. Septic systems need pumping and maintenance. Wells can fail and require re-drill, and property taxes never stop. Most off-grid failures happen because people run out of money halfway through the build and end up with an unusable property they can't sell. Here's the brutal truth about off-grid living in Texas that no one wants to say. It's not for everyone, and most people who try it fail within 2 years. The physical demands are extreme, the legal obstacles are real, and the isolation breaks people mentally. If you're running from debt, legal problems, or personal failures, going off-grid won't solve those issues, it will amplify them. But if you're serious, skilled, financially stable, and willing to accept that true independence requires constant work and adaptation, Texas offers opportunities that most states don't. You can own land outright, collect unlimited rainwater, generate your own power, and live without asking permission from anyone. That freedom is real, but it costs everything you have, and you need to count that cost before you commit. The survival secrets that separate successful off-grid Texans from the failures come down to 3 things: legal compliance where it matters, ruthless efficiency and resource management, and mental toughness that doesn't quit when systems fail. You need to master water storage and conservation because drought will test you every year. You need backup systems for everything: multiple water sources, hybrid power generation with solar and generator backup, and food storage for months. You need to understand that off-grid living isn't about rejecting technology, It's about controlling your own infrastructure. The most successful off-gridders in Texas use modern tools, efficient systems, and smart design to minimize labor and maximize independence. They stay legal enough to avoid county attention, but independent enough to survive when the grid fails. They build slowly, test their systems, and fix problems before they become emergencies. The window for legal off-grid living in Texas is closing faster than most people realize. As cities expand and counties adopt stricter building codes, the areas where you can truly live independently are shrinking. 20 years ago, you could build almost anything in rural Texas without permits. Today, even remote counties are hiring code enforcement officers and cracking down on alternative structures. If you're serious about this, you need to move now. Not in 5 years when you've saved more money or when you're ready to retire. Buy land in the right county, start building legally, and establish your residency before the regulations change. The people who wait will find themselves priced out or regulated out of the lifestyle entirely. And if you want to go deeper into the specific counties where off-grid living is still viable, the exact building code loopholes that protect you legally, and the water system designs that actually work in Texas drought conditions, you'll find detailed guides and documents available through the link in the pinned comment. These resources include county-by-county legal analysis, solar system sizing calculators for Texas climate, and water storage strategies tested in real off-grid properties. Check them out when you're ready to move from planning to action. This isn't just about surviving off-grid in Texas. It's about protecting your freedom before the system takes it away. The legal traps are real, the survival challenges are brutal, and most people who try this fail. But if you prepare correctly, understand the laws, and build systems that can handle Texas extremes, you can achieve true independence on your own land. The choice is yours. Stay dependent on systems that can fail, or build the skills and infrastructure to survive no matter what happens. If this information changed how you see off-grid living, hit that like button, drop a comment with your biggest concern about going off-grid, and share this with someone who needs to hear it before they make a costly mistake. Subscribe now because the next video covers the specific survival systems every off-gridder needs before their first Texas summer. Don't just watch, take action, because your independence depends on decisions you make today, not someday.